One thing that I'm noticing has remained true throughout all of this is that beavers are really taking over our lives, which I'm kind of stealing a page from our next presenter here, Alexis Broz, who is with Wild for Life, and is going to be giving her talk on how beavers took over her life and her social media page. And she has a prop, a lovely visual aid in addition to her PowerPoint. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Would you like me to put it up here for you? Okay.
A bit taller than our other presenters. Thank you everyone for having me. My name's Alexis Broz, and I am with Wild for Life, Inc. It's a 501c3 rescue and rehabilitation center that I started along with my family and some of my friends in Upstate New York. About a year and a half ago, I had never seen a beaver up close. And as you can see, that changed. But it was an emotional journey for me. And it quite literally started to take over my life. So this is that whole story. It focuses on, I'm going to take this right out of the stand. I move my head too much. Focuses on 5 beavers. There you go. You can hear me much better now. The very first beaver we took in, it was a cold, rainy night. I got a call from our wildlife emergency hotline, which is run by another organization that I'm on the board of called North Country Wild Care. I didn't know anything about beavers. I think I thought because I worked with a lot of rodents and they build dams that I was going to get something like a water woodchuck, and that wasn't quite accurate. Theodore had multiple fractures in his scapula and pelvis. I immediately could tell that he was fractured just from a palpitating and exam, and that he was clearly painful. I also knew that I was in far over my head. So I started reaching out to the Janet L. Swanson Wildlife Hospital. It's a hospital that I'm blessed to have a great relationship with. I bring all of my challenging patients there, and as John said, beavers are the most challenging patient I think I've ever had. And I work with a lot of species, so that's saying something. I sent Theodore out to the Cornell Wildlife University, and he had quite a long stay there. And in the meantime, a little bit of the word got out that I was taking in beavers, which, I don't know, I guess word spreads quickly. I still didn't know much about them. I talked to Cornell, I talked to my veterinarians, but I ended up with a second beaver who was much larger. She was a 2-year-old named Willow. And she made me feel like a bit of a beaver superhero, honestly. So Willow came in. She had been on land for clearly quite a while. She was dehydrated. She had abscesses in her hind legs. Something about beavers that they're very territorial. That makes them really challenging to reunite if we ever find them with families, because if you accidentally put a beaver into a territory that they didn't come from, they will fight and is very violent. Those teeth are a tremendous weapon. So she had, as I started to investigate and see why was this beaver, for one, letting me hold her. She's a 40-pound adult beaver. You wouldn't expect to see these images, but I scooped her up on my lap and put her on the edge of my bathtub there, and I was like, this beaver's not eating, this beaver's lethargic, she's in great body condition, she's certainly, hardy, but as I looked closer, I found that her ears were just full of ticks. I'm talking, I think I pulled 27 ticks from each ear, and they were just deeply embedded in the canal, a lot of swelling and inflammation, and I think that was just pressing on her ear canal so much that she lost her balance. Immediately, as soon as I got those out, she felt much better. So I never planned on having beavers. I had a bobcat, which I also never planned on having the year before. And I was able to modify that to make our first beaver enclosure. There's not a lot of guidance for beaver rehabbers. I'm so thrilled to meet John, and I've met Jane, who's here, who has some beavers too, and we're all on the East Coast together, but it's a really small community, and there's no real guidelines for what we're doing. Theodore came home from Cornell. His fractures had healed really nicely, but he still had a lot of other issues. He had some infections going on. They didn't really present right away. I thought he was a lot hardier than he was, and he was, 15 pounds at this point, and I'm like, this beaver is ready to go outside. And I think that I really fumbled that decision. There were a lot of setbacks and a lot of things that I think I may have failed at in my first year with beavers. This isn't like a straightforward art. I put him outside. As John noted, beavers are excellent escape artists. I had a male and a female next to each other in what I thought was just a foolproof enclosure, but Willow, our large female, did badger her way into to keep Theodore company. It seemed like a match made in heaven. They were really, really close. They had some of that beautiful snuggling and grooming and play behavior. Not so much wrestling, I think because Theodore was so much smaller. But Theodore got really sick. He developed imbalance of bacteria in his gut and high levels of Giardia. I definitely blamed myself. Now I'd had this beaver for many months at this point, healing from his fractures. I'd obviously grown attached. They have a way of just working their way into your heart, under your skin, like no other species I've ever worked with. But I started staying with this beaver day and night, just, every poop, every time he'd eat, everything. Beavers can go downhill so quickly, and so they're so dependent on their hydration and what's going on in their insides. Eventually, Theodore did pass. I might move that slide a little preemptively. I was crushed. I was absolutely devastated. But no sooner did I get over that tragedy. I think 2 days later, I got another call on our wildlife hotline, and someone said they had a baby beaver. I was like, no way. It is way too early in the season for one. It's got to be a woodchuck. We get calls about woodchucks all the time. People always think they're beavers, and they're very clearly not. I drove. It was only about 20 minutes from my house, and they'd found this little baby beaver in the middle of a highway. And it sure was a beaver. So this is my first experience with baby Bo. When we got her, she weighed only about 470 grams. She still had that evidence of an umbilicus, on her umbilical cord was still attached. She was fragile, but otherwise in good shape. But she made it 200 yards away from over the flooded river channel, out into the middle of a highway. And I'm going to be a little quiet here so you can listen. Oh, I'm going to play this again. Can you all hear that? That was the moment that I fell in love. That one moment, destroyed me. This beaver was so deep in my soul. I had to start sleeping with earplugs in, because no matter what room I put her in, that little sound would travel, and it awoke some maternal instinct in me that I didn't know I had. And she ate almost constantly. We started off with the syringe and moved on to a baby bottle. She grew. Everything, was progressing nicely. This was my first experience, so I watched her like a hawk. I don't think I slept much that whole time. I still carried a lot of anxiety in my heart from what happened with Theodore and just how quickly things went south. So it was an emotional period that affected me a lot. People who knew me knew that I was struggling, and also taking care of over 100 other wild animals. You can see this little notch in her tail. She still has that now. All I can assume, we were trying to figure out how she might have gotten that notch. I'm thinking it must have been actually in utero. Another sibling must have taken a chunk out of her tail while she was still in the womb, because it was already fully healed by the time that I found her, and she must have only been born a few days before, no scab, no anything, so it had to happen inside. I'll let you absorb the cuteness, but I think John went over a lot of what goes into the care of baby beavers, so this won't be a very technical presentation, more of an emotional one. So at this point in my life, I started to make a change. When I took in Bo and I was working for the power company. I developed this crazy plan. I was going to quit my job, and I wanted to pursue this dream that I had to start Wild for Life. So when Theodore got sick, I started taking time off work. When I got Bo, I just quit. I didn't look back. I have an incredibly supportive family. My mom's here in the audience. And I wrote in this slideshow that it was my boyfriend who was for me, but we actually got engaged since the time I made this presentation. So he's now my very supportive fiancé, and he is home taking care of our baby beavers right now. I'll go through this real quick. I think that there's two main things in taking care of beavers that are important. John went over those, but their guts. It's the same way that they're so good for the ecosystem. They have an entire ecosystem living within them. Their gut flora is in constant flux, and if that gets a little out of balance, it's just a big problem. And the other part is their mind and their stress levels. They do need that love. They need that attention. Bo recovered. and got healthy, but he was very lonely. We thought she was lonely. So we found a second beaver. I'm hurrying up because I'm getting the time check. After we introduced our second beaver, we started having an unexpected medical issue. Eye ulcers presented in both young baby beavers. It was also followed by a respiratory disease. It behaved in the only way our vets could describe in something similar to feline herpes in kittens. It spread quickly, and it affected both eyes on both beavers. 3 out of 4 eyeballs were covered, but one of them did not. One of baby Bo's eyes had to be removed. She developed glaucoma and became completely blind. After that recovery, she was no longer accepted by her mate, Arrow. Well, not mate, they were both female. And we thought that we had a lot longer time to house these 2 beavers together. They were only about 4 months old at this time. Arrow was closer to 5 months old, and she became incredibly aggressive. So we anticipated being able to keep them together for closer to a year, and that didn't happen for us. I know I'm out of time. Is it okay if I play this one quick video? I think you'll enjoy it. This is what's in store for the future of Bo the Beaver.
On almost every Bo the Beaver video, there is one question that everyone has been asking. And that is, will Bo the Beaver be releasable to the wild? So now I'm finally going to tell you the answer, which is that I still don't actually have one. It's way too early to tell. I know what I feel in my heart of hearts is the right path for Bo, but she's too young for me to make that decision for her. There's arguments on both sides. Bo only has one eye, but beavers don't really rely on eyesight as much as other senses. Right now, Bo loves people a lot more than other beavers. But it's normal for baby beavers to form attachments with their caregivers, the same way that she would bond with her real parents in the wild. And one day, she would still want to leave them too and start her own family. Bo was found so young, though, that human care is all she knows. And now that Arrow is rejecting her, that's not really helping. But she is just a baby, and when her hormones come in, she could grow out of it. There is an additional factor, though, in my opinion, and that's the net positive that she could do for her species. Not everyone loves beavers as much as I do. Quite frankly, there's a real lack of appreciation going on for everything they do for our environment, and a whole lot of misinformation about beavers' impact on flooding. About half the people that I mentioned that I'm raising baby beavers to say something along the lines of, oh, they're nasty, or oh, they're mean, or oh, they're such pests. Sometimes it doesn't even feel like we're talking about the same animal. Because when I think of beavers, I think of cleaner water, habitat for thousands of species, drought prevention, flood prevention, more fertile soil, more birds, more pollinators, and a loving creature that mates for life and is extremely loyal to its family. Bo could be one beaver back in the wild, or she could help us educate the next generation and help flip the script on how we as humans coexist with beavers in the wild. Together, we could teach others how to work with nature instead of against it. Because if you're trying to save the planet, understanding beavers is a damn good place to start.
So the future still is a bit uncertain for baby Bo. There could be one day where she decides that I'm not her family or the family that she needs anymore. She might need a mate. She might need to return. Deep inside, I hope maybe that isn't the case. I hope that she wants to join me in helping educate the next generation. She does have one eye for people just walking in, and that is a good case for her to be medically releasable. There's an understanding that that isn't the main sense that she uses as a beaver, and we'll just have to roll with the punches from there. So this is the future. I'm not sure what, oh, there might be a video there. We recently moved onto a much larger property where we are trying to open one of the first real rehabilitation centers in our area. Being in upstate New York, we are all home-based rehabbers that are operating out of our houses. You saw a couple clips in there of a beaver in my bathtub, and that's the general setup that most people have, I'd say. These are some of the enclosures we've already built. And again, we don't just take in beavers, but we are filling a void of where there are no aquatic enclosures and habitats. We have space now, we have otters and beavers, and it's mostly just out of need. You know, people had calls about beavers that I couldn't place on the hotline. I couldn't answer. I didn't have a, where should I put this beaver? Where can it go? So I became that person. A little clicker. All of this was made possible for me by social media. It's not the traditional path that I think a lot of people get into rehabilitation, but I started sharing my journey. And I think being someone up here who's presenting at BeaverCon who doesn't have a PhD, who isn't a doctor of anything, what I provide is being the liaison or someone who can share that story to a large audience and make it simple, to not not necessarily simplify, but to break it down into small little digestible bites for the public and make them care. So that's what I try and do through my social media. It also is how we fundraise because as rehabbers in New York, we do not get any funding. We're completely volunteer. These are just some cute pictures for your enjoyment and a little happy Halloween. And I hope that you will follow us and check out our website, Wild for Life. We also have, with donations, these t-shirts if you would like to get one and support us in your area. Thank you.